Hey guys, so I spent like the past few days being cooked alive by Hunger Games fans. Yeah, fair enough. The good thing is, I don't think that's going to happen here because, of course, no one hates Wheel of Time more than Wheel of Time fans. And I do think that's rather interesting how so many massive Wheel of Time fans have so many criticisms of it. But where the series is so long, it kind of makes sense, if someone just doesn't like it, they'll probably drop off in the first few books. So by the time you really get in there, you pretty much have whittled it down to the people who really like it regardless of its problems. With that said, we're going to be continuing on with the journey today with the Fires of Heaven and the Lord of Chaos. Two absolutely gigantic books. Kind of insane going through these back to back. Now, like my previous Wheel of Time videos, these are not really meant to be spoiler discussions of the books. I will be, talking all about them and my general thoughts. But I want them to be accessible to people who haven't read the series yet or maybe haven't gotten this far. That being said, I will be having to talk about, general synopsis stuff and which characters are alive, so, use your own discretion for that. But if you're just checking in to see how I am still liking the series with the intention of reading it yourself one day, you should be fine. Book 5, The Fires of Heaven. Now, coming off of The Shadow Rising, I was very, very excited because if you remember, I absolutely loved The Shadow Rising. I really think it elevated the series in a lot of ways. It became so much more ambitious, so much more stuff was happening, interesting things going on with the characters. It was just extremely well done, and if you know, that was the big change to the series and the way things had been going. The Fires of Heaven is sort of the follow-up, how we are dealing with the consequences, the fallouts of what happened in The Shadow Rising. So we're once again following all of our characters that we know and love, now in very different positions. Rand now sees himself in an extreme position of power with a large army at his disposal. The Aes Sedai of the White Tower are really going through it. Nynaeve and Elaine decide to join the circus, and Perrin, if you remember, was elevated to GOAT status after The Shadow Rising. Well, he's not in this book. So I really enjoyed a lot of what this book was doing. Specifically with Rand, Moiraine, Mat, these are all characters who I enjoyed before, especially Mat. But I think Jordan does some really interesting things with them here. Of course, Rand is in, this new position of power. He's trying to deal with it while also going mad, which is, something we knew was probably going to happen from the beginning. We're really starting to see that take hold, and it makes him such an interesting character. He's become very unpredictable, and I like how the characters around him are struggling to deal with it. And Matt kind of just wants to walk away, but at the same time, due to previous events, he is now very valuable to Rand's war cause. And I think what goes on with Moiraine in this book was very unexpected. She takes on an interesting role, and definitely shifts the dynamic she had with Rand up to this point. The stuff of the Aes Sedai, I've always been interested in, but I think, what's going on right now in this book, very interesting stuff. From the beginning, Jordan was sort of playing around with classic sexist fantasy tropes, where, it would always be the men in positions of power, and the Wheel of Time world is kind of reversed. The Aes Sedai are seen as these beacons of power and authority, but in this book, it's really starting to crumble, and you're seeing some really interesting things happening. The Amyrlin seat, Swan Sanche, becomes a very prominent character in this book, one that I never really expected to be as interested in as I ended up being. But, as much as I respect and applaud Robert Jordan for doing all of these things to, tear down the patriarchy or whatever, I do find it kind of funny how, seemingly hundreds of pages are just dedicated to women simping over Rand. It's a bit more relevant in the next book. I'll save that one. So yeah, this book does a lot of cool things. I really like the direction the overall story took after The Shadow Rising, exploring a lot of these characters in very fascinating ways. The world building, as always, is extremely well done here. But reading it, this was definitely the first Wheel of Time book that felt like it had a good bit of bloat to it. Despite how large the cast is, despite how detailed the settings are, I don't know if this one needed to be over 800 pages, especially when there are definitely sections of this book that, I'll be honest, wasn't too hot on. There is a circus plotline, of course, and after looking into it, it does seem like this circus plotline is a bit infamous. I'm not even exaggerating calling it that. Nynaeve and Elaine join the circus, and they're there for a good while, and they're like walking on tight ropes and doing magic tricks, and it's like, yes, there's obviously a reason why they're doing it, but stuff like this really doesn't feel necessary when there are more interesting things we could be focusing on. Like, hello, Perrin, what the heck? It was definitely weird when Rand was almost completely absent from the Dragon Reborn, but it did make sense in that, we needed more time to flesh out all of the other characters. And Perrin likely isn't in this book because he just couldn't fit. But, I feel like a lot of this book could have been trimmed down, and then maybe we could have fit some more interesting stuff in there involving him. Maybe. I really like Perrin. I was just bummed that he wasn't here at all. Especially with how crazy what went down in The Shadow Rising was. Not a huge deal, because, I'm going through all the books. I know he'll show up again. But I can definitely imagine people being frustrated with this when the books were first coming out. Like, oh, you wait a year to see what happens to your favorite character. It's like, oh, sorry, you gotta wait too. Though, to be fair, these were coming out pretty damn fast in the 90s. So, make my way through the book. I was interested. I was engaged most of the time. But I was really getting the feeling that this would end up being my least favorite Wheel of Time book yet, which, it's kind of lame. However, I gotta say the climax of this book absolutely gobsmacked. And it's a long stretch too, like maybe the last 200 pages or so. Absolutely fantastic stuff. The directions the story takes were shocking and unpredictable. It resulted in some massive status quo changes, and I really could not have been happier with it. So while I did have a few problems with it, I still overall really enjoyed The Fires of Heaven. I gave this one 4 stars, and I was very excited to continue into the Lord of Chaos. Fun fact about Lord of Chaos, as far as word count goes, this is the longest Wheel of Time book. This copy here is just over 900 pages, and I gotta say, out of all of the 900 plus page books I've ever read, Lord of Chaos is kind of remarkable, in the sense that, relative to its page count, nothing really happens in it. It's kind of weird. I was curious. I looked up the Wikipedia plots for these books, and I did notice that Lord of Chaos, like the summary, was definitely smaller than previous books. And that made sense to me, because again, not much is really happening in this book. This book starts with a novella-length prologue. It was kind of crazy, but I did enjoy getting some more development on the villains. Some whole global warming stuff is going on in the world. Jordan was kind of ahead on the curve with the social commentary, wasn't he? Some big changes happened at the end of the last book, so of course the characters are dealing with the fallouts yet again. Rand is, continuing to go crazy. The girl troubles I mentioned feel much more prominent in this book. You have like a handful of ladies here who are just salivating at the thought of holding Rand's hand. And they're all buddies with each other. They're like, oh my god, we all love Rand so much, what are we gonna do? So they're like scheming to become sister wives and stuff, all the while Rand is, pacing around camp. All these voices in his head driving him mad, and he's like, oh, which one do I choose? This one is so pretty. Oh, and I only think of this one as a friend. But oh, do I? I don't know, and I don't want to hurt this one's feeling. Have I mentioned Robert Jordan's not very good at writing romance? I don't think this is really an issue with this type of book that is not a romance book, but there are a lot of love interests and relationships happening, and they feel a lot more soap opera-y rather than like actual, genuine, believable romance. Like, the characters talking about their love interests oftentimes reminds me more of, like, I don't know, like middle school drama or something. Like, sometimes I forget these people are grown-ass adults. And now, I did exaggerate a bit. Like, obviously, stuff does happen in this book. It is very long, so, statistically, things will happen. The way this book continues the plotline of the Aes Sedai, I thought was really, really engaging. I also think what's been happening with the gender power imbalance in this series, some big things happened in the last book, and like things are really starting to move forward in Lord of Chaos in regards to that. Definitely a crazy move that has some wild implications in this book, and I really love almost everything about this plotline. Without giving much away, have you guys seen the Barbie movie? It's basically that, like Rand is like Ryan Gosling, kind of. You get what I mean. This book is also quite a bit darker than any other Wheel of Time book we have gotten. You know, it's still not a grimdark series or anything, but the series is becoming more violent, a lot more mature subject matter. Some stuff is actually genuinely shocking because I just did not expect it from a Wheel of Time book at all. And once again, man, Robert Jordan really nailed the climax. This book ends with probably the best action scene in the whole series, just this gigantic epic battle sequence that had so many great moments, and again just ends with this massive shift in the status quo that makes me very eager to read more. I just look at this book and I'm like, really, man? I think of all of the massive things that happen in this, and I'm just like, it could have been 500. It could have been 500. Which is why you'll probably be very surprised to hear that not only did I give this a 4.5 stars, I think it's my second favorite book in the series behind The Shadow Rising. You're like, that don't make any sense. What are you talking about? Even though I thought a lot of this book probably could have been trimmed down, I had so much fun with it. I mean, I've already been in love with this world and, you know, just exploring it more and spending more time with the characters. Even when the characters are aggravating and I want to kick them through a wall, I still find them so, like, interesting and fun to follow, and I want to see them overcome their challenges and succeed. Even if the book didn't have as many massive moments as previous ones or was as action-packed, you know, I'm just still so invested in the ride here, and unlike The Fires of Heaven, I pretty much enjoyed almost every plotline we were getting here. And that is, of course, helped by the return of Perrin, and I love Perrin, and he is fantastic in this book, but at the same time, there still really wasn't much of him here. Which, you know, I can safely say Matt is now elevated to GOAT status, though, along with Perrin. Rand will probably get there one day, the way his character is going. But yeah, Matt's great, Perrin's great. I really hope they both get equal page time going forward. So yeah, these two books are very interesting, you know. They're ones where I'm really starting to see definitely some of the flaws that the Wheel of Time has, but at the same time, so much of it is still so good that while it's, yeah, fun to complain about things here or there, I'm still just finding this such a fascinating journey. With something that started as, you know, essentially a Lord of the Rings knockoff, it's really evolved into its own thing with so many layers, so many moving parts, and I continue to be impressed. So here's what is next on the agenda. Books 7 through 10. And you may be a bit confused as to why I'm lumping all 4 of these into one video next. Well, I have to say, these books have quite the reputation if you are familiar with the fan base's reception to the series. I know there is debate on which of these books do and don't fall into the supposed slog, but these are the ones that are usually brought up. So next time on my Wheel of Time adventure, we will be going through this alleged slog to see if the rumors are true or not, but hopefully I will still find enjoyment in these books, because I'm really having a good time so far. Thank you all for watching. Leave your thoughts on anything Wheel of Time related in the comments down below, and I will see you next time for a bit of a different type of video that I've been wanting to make for a while, and I'm very excited to make it. So yeah, I hope you look forward to it.